Thanks for tuning in today. This is Billy Mack and Evan Zeppos talking to you about a couple of issues important to Wisconsin politics. Billy, it's good to see you.
Good to see you, EZ. We want to thank our sponsors, Michael Best Strategies, for hosting these podcasts. And hopefully over the next several months, we're going to bring you inside all the major campaigns and give you the things to look for as a bystander.
Well, I think what we can do is probably give people a realistic look and maybe talk about some of the things that others aren't talking about and kind of take a peek behind the curtain and see what's really there. Well, I think we'll try to make it fun. So let's start off and talk about the governor's race. And since most of the action is on the Republican side these days, I cede the floor to you.
Well, we finally have a settled field, right? There's been a lot of discussion over the last couple of months about whether former Governor Tommy Thompson, the guy who gave me the nickname Billy Mack, would get into the race, or Tim Michels, successful businessman and runs Michels Corporation. And that question was finally settled a week ago when Tim Michels did, in fact, get into the race and Tommy Thompson took a pass. So we now have a settled field. Rebecca Kleefisch, former Lieutenant Governor, Kevin Nicholson, former Marine businessman, Tim Rantham, state lawmaker, and now Tim Michels. And I think it's going to be an exciting race. The Marquette poll last week suggests that this race, Evan, is wide open. 46% of Republican primary voters haven't made up their mind yet.
Well, I think what's interesting is that it's not quite a clown car like the Democrats were 4 years ago at this point, where they had close to a dozen candidates, as I recall. But it's really getting more entertaining on the GOP side. It's getting more complicated. And I think what it really is more challenging for Rebecca Kleefisch. The entrance of Mr. Michels into the race, and I, for one, am disappointed former governor didn't get in the race. Governor Thompson, I know you are. But what the polling showed, and it didn't include Michels at all, but it showed she had not yet closed the deal. So she went from presumed frontrunner to top tier to now she's fighting to try to win this thing. So I think it's a big challenge on the Republican side.
I think the biggest lane in this race today is the outsider lane, and Tim Michels is trying to fill that. Obviously, Kevin Nicholson is trying to fill that as well. Tim Rantham has a more narrow path. He's speaking directly to Trump voters on the decertification issue. I don't think his lane is big enough to even be competitive, frankly. So we're really talking about the big three in the race, and Michels comes in with some significant advantages, starting with money. To win a statewide race, you need three things: message, organization, and money. And Michels will have the most money of all the candidates in this race. He's decided he's not going to take special interest PAC money or money from lobbyists, and he's going to mainly self-fund this race, whatever that takes. And nobody knows what that number is yet, but that's got to be scary for the Kleefisch and Nicholson campaigns.
Well, Nicholson, it's interesting. 2-3 weeks ago, the battle was Rebecca and Nicholson, and he was very much a part of this race. Now is he still around?
Right.
Is he relevant in this race? And he is relevant in it, but he's got to find something to do to try to elevate this and get back into the top tier of the race. He was when Rebecca was just he and Rebecca, but now it's much more complicated, and Michels will have considerable resources.
Right.
And as we see in the Democratic Senate race, resources are going to matter because Alex Lazary is kind of shot to near the top just by spending a lot of money on TV, and that's a good thing. Interesting, you said that campaigns are about three things: money, message, and organization. Maybe not so much organization in this type of primary. I think money and message are going to be the most important things. And I think now Rebecca Kleefisch, who had, I would argue, a kind of a rough close to the month of April. She got whacked by a former cabinet member in the Walker administration. She went way out on the edge with the saying the election was rigged, with really kind of just embracing the whole alleged big lie. So she had a tough close to the month. And then Michels comes in, and he's all over TV all weekend.
Well, and Michels is going to be on for the rest of the race. There's 100 days left in this campaign. He's already been on the air for 8 days, and I don't see him coming down for the rest of the way, all the way to November if he wins the primary. So look for him to be the biggest spender in this race without question, and so far his message seems to be resonating.
Well, the message is, I think people were looking for something. She just she hadn't captured it. She hadn't gotten over the hump of, she was presumed a nominee, but not way out in front nominee. And credit that to Nicholson, and he's got some financial resources. I think it'll be interesting to see, will Nicholson go up on the air now? He needs to get relevant, and the way I see this campaign unfolding is that Nicholson is sitting by the wayside. Tim Michels and Rebecca Clayfish are slugging it out on TV. Not negative, but they're both up pretty strong with their own message. And Nicholson's kind of in the back row. He's got to decide whether he wants to start writing checks or someone for him to start writing checks to get back into this game.
Well, I think that's an important point, Evan, that we should tell our viewers about is how can Nicholson get back in this race? He can either get back in directly through his campaign, but those are hard donations, or through a super PAC. And those donations can come from somewhere else. And could be the U-Lines in Kenosha who helped fund him in 2018. But those campaign donations have limitations. So you can't necessarily do what a candidate's campaign can do through your super PAC. So it's a challenge for Kevin. I think he got in the race a little bit hot, scorched earth, anti-party, anti-Madison, anti-establishment, and that worked for a while.
Isn't that what Tim Michels is? He says he's going to turn Madison upside down.
He did.
He's not going to take the lobbyist money.
He's not.
He's not the insider. He's the outsider.
Right.
And
so they're clearly fighting for that lane. And in fairness to Rebecca, I would say she's still the front runner. I mean, she has been in the lead in all the polls. The most recent Marquette poll had her at 32%. The tough part for her is she's only moved 2 points in the last 2 months.
At least the right way, though.
She's moved positive in the last 2 months.
Statistically insignificant.
But 2 points is significant. Yeah, I mean, undecided is beating her by 14 points. So that's the challenge for her is how does she now try and close that deal? She's essentially occupying the establishment lane, and is that big enough to win?
She is the establishment. Now, a question for you. Who's the winner in all of this right now? Not to say who's going to win the primary, but when you look at the development of Michels getting in, Rebecca having to recalibrate her race, Nicholson kind of fading by the background, and Ramtham just, throwing more thunderbolts out. Who's the big winner out of all of this?
Well, I think right now, Tony Evers could.
Of course, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
Tony Evers is the big winner. He's sitting on more than $10 million of money.
Well, I think it's probably 15 by now.
Well, whatever it might be. It's gaining interest, as we say.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
He's also maximizing his power as governor, leveraging it, dominating the agenda. And what you've got at the meantime is crazy people, I think, this is my view, people like Gableman out there who on the last weekend, went out and attacked his boss, the guy who hired him. So it's like, be careful for what you wish. You might get it. So I think Tony Evers is sitting back. It's like, could I get another beer and some more popcorn as I watch this comedy?
Yeah. Well, to Evan's point, I think in fairness, this is the Republicans' race to lose unless they give it away. And Tony Evers won't be easy to beat. He's got 49% job approval. More than 50% of the people think he cares about them. That's a key question on a poll. And as EZ and I have been talking about, he might have $15 million by the time we get to July, which would be the most of any incumbent candidate in Wisconsin history.
The biggest concern I had about the polling data in the governor's race was the right track, wrong track.
Me too.
And the governor still has some work to do there because I think it was 57% wrong track. Or
33
52,
right track.
57, was it? Yeah. So I think he can repair that. I think the fact that he's near 50 on a positive, that the Republicans really aren't gelling, and that they've got a message, it appears to me, at least when I'm looking at it, and the data shows that it's not a good message. Their message is to try to run as a Ron DeSantis. More guns, more Texas-style restrictions on abortions, and more of the alleged big lie. I don't think that's what people want. People in this state we still have three parts of this state: Democrats, Republicans, and independents. The independents have shrunk because you and I both know that it's unusual for two people who are Republican and Democrat to sit across and get cordial with each other. But we do.
Sadly.
Yeah, I know it is sad. Not sad that you and I do it, but sad that the rest of the world can't follow our suit.
Right.
But there's that small group probably now, maybe 7 to 12%, if that, in the middle that's going to decide this thing. I don't think they want more guns. I don't think they want a Ron DeSantis-style governor in their office, and that's what they're seeing on the R side.
I think it's in all of the top three Republicans' interest to focus on Tony Evers over the next 100 days. And that's the best way to be prepared for the general election. Will they do it? I doubt it. I think there will be some detours along that road, sadly, and hopefully that doesn't blow up the entire primary, because this should be a race that Republicans are well positioned to take out an incumbent. Now, in fairness, that has only happened 4 times since we've had a 4-year term in 1970. 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans have beaten incumbents. All 4 of those individuals first came through a competitive primary, which we now have. So it's important for Republicans to stay focused on the target, and that's November.
Boy, I'll tell you, I don't think they're listening to you, though, because all you got to do is look at what's been going on in the legislature with the rally in the weekend on the election and what's going on inside the Republican Party. And they're eating their own right now. And that's probably a big advantage to the Democrats. And as I said, Tony Evers can just sit back, have another box of popcorn, and have another beer, and say, let's have this race come August 9th. We'll go to work.
Easy, what do you think is Evers' biggest advantage heading into the general?
That the Republicans are out of touch, generally speaking, I believe, with mainstream Wisconsin. They're still so catered to the Trump wing of the party that they're not moving towards the center. You cannot win with only Republican votes, just like you cannot win with only Democrat votes. You have to find a way to get to the middle a little bit, and the Republicans aren't doing that.
This is an area where we're going to disagree a little bit. I think Evers' biggest advantage is that he is vanilla. He's not polarizing. He's the likable uncle. So if the other side gets into a food fight, he's an easy choice. That's ultimately what happened in 2018. Scott Walker was a fairly polarizing figure by that race, in large part because of the recall, then the race for the run for president. Evers was able to be sort of that calming influence, and he was a safe alternative. And so far, he's still trying to occupy that lane.
I agree with you. I have what I believe is an endearing name for Governor Evers. That is, he's Mr. Rogers.
Yeah.
And the neighborhood is good.
Yeah.
People like Mr. Rogers. People trust Mr. Rogers. People feel safe around Mr. Rogers. And I think that's the Mr. Rogers campaign that Tony Evers should run. Now, what he's going to run against, I'm not sure yet.
Yeah, well, Republicans need to capitalize on the right direction, wrong track. An incumbent, Tony Evers is now running 15 or 16 points ahead of the right direction number. Most pollsters would tell you the best an incumbent can do is about 10 points ahead of that. So at some point, political gravity is going to set in here. And Republicans need to be in a position to capitalize on that.
I think it's going to be hard for them to do, because I think this primary in the next 100 days is going to be playing out on TV. So it's going to be very visible. And I think it's not going to be a DEFCON 3, but it's not going to be a pleasant tea party.
Let's talk about issues. You brought up a few. The Marquette poll listed top concerns of voters were inflation, public schools, immigration, crime, and COVID. That, to me, Evan, says that's an issue matrix that works to Republican advantages. What do you think?
Well, I'd be very concerned as a Democrat about the inflation issue. And I think that is something that's problematic. It's really a national issue, but if I were a Republican, I'd be running hard on it here in Wisconsin.
No question.
Public schools, I think, is a concern if you're a Democrat, because in many places, particularly in Milwaukee and in other large urban areas, public education is not held in the highest regard, we'll say.
Right.
And I think there are going to continue to be issues and problems and concerns there. On the COVID issue, I will tell you, I thought the Marquette poll had some very good numbers for Tony Evers in it. People 60 plus were supportive of the way the governor had handled COVID. So I think that's a good thing.
I'm with you on all that. We're going to get to our final minute here, where what's the one thing you want our viewers to know over the next couple of weeks that they should pay attention to?
Well, I'm going to go off topic a little bit here, and I'm going to make a prediction and kind of put my neck out a little bit, but I don't think Milwaukee is going to get the Republican convention. I think it's going to end up in Nashville.
And I think,
I don't think so. And I don't have any inside word on it, but I'm trying to look at the equation and put the tea leaves together, and I think the problems within the Republican Party here in Wisconsin, the problems within the city of Milwaukee, challenges that they're having, are such that people are going to say, why don't we go to Nashville?
I hope you're wrong. I was for the Democratic convention coming here. I think anytime, I'm former Commerce Secretary of the state. Anytime you have an event that big coming to the state, it's great news for the state. So I hope the RNC does come here. My one topic that we didn't get to today is Donald Trump. Watch to see what Donald Trump does in the GOP primary over the next 30 or 40 days. His endorsement's going to be huge. Thanks for joining Billy Mack and EZ. We'll see you next time.